Welcome back to the Real News Network. I'm Paul Jay at our studio in Washington, D.C. Our special guest today is Helen Thomas. Helen Thomas has been a member of the White House press corps for over 58 years. She's covered every president since John F. Kennedy. She was the first female officer of the National Press Club, first female member and president of the White House Correspondents Association, and in 1975 she was the first female member and later became the president of the Gridiron Club. She's written 5 books. Her latest, with co-author Craig Crawford, is Listen Up, Mr. President, Everything You Always Wanted Your President to Know and Do. So you've been telling presidents what to do for like a long time.
They don't take my advice.
Well, here's an example. President Obama, first of all, welcome. Thanks for joining us. So President Obama had his inaugural Helen Thomas question in his first press conference, and here's a little clip we're gonna play from the press conference.
Helen, this is my inaugural moment here. I'm really excited.
Mr. President, do you know of any country in the Middle East that has nuclear weapons?
With respect to nuclear weapons, I don't want to speculate. What I know is this, that if we see a nuclear arms race in a region as volatile as the Middle East, everybody will be in danger. And one of my goals is to prevent nuclear proliferation generally. I think that it's important for the United States, in concert with Russia, to lead the way on this. Okay? All right. Sam Stein, Huffington Post. Where's Sam?
So President Obama really never answered your question about nuclear weapons in the Middle East, and obviously
it would be
you were
pitiful
asking
if we took his answer truthfully, because he said I didn't want to speculate. Well, the president is not supposed to speculate as to who has nuclear arms or not. He's supposed to know.
Well, obviously, we know he knows, and this is this great we know, and he knows we know we know.
I was testing his credibility.
So that's it's actually quite a profound question, because it goes to the whole Middle East, U.S. policy in the Middle East. Not only does the U.S. have a kind of double standard on nuclear weapons when it comes to Iran and such, but what do you make of Obama's whole Middle East policy? Is there a break with Bush here or not?
Too one-sided in favor of Israel. He ignores all the horrors that have happened to Palestinians. Their country taken away, thousands imprisoned for many, many years. We give them arms, we give the aid to Israel, as it continues to occupy and just treat the Palestinians like they're newcomers, and these are Europeans who come there, who have no ties to Palestine.
When President Obama was elected and was first discussing foreign policy, there was a suggestion from him there would be a new approach to the Middle East. He made his speech in Cairo. He suggested, not suggested, he said that Israel should stop any settlement expansion. What's happened since all of that?
He took the easy way out, which is to go along with Israel, which most countries do. They had the power, propaganda, and everything else to sell their point of view. Palestinians have no voice.
So in terms of understanding, what President Obama's done is nothing new. This has been a White House approach for a long time.
He was accused of being a Muslim, which is, the worst thing can happen to you, apparently. And I think he was afraid of that kind of tie.
But you've been covering the White House, as we said, for like 58 years. Is there talk about the whole history of U.S. approach to Israel and the Palestinian conflict?
When Israel was created, and they declared themselves in 1948, Truman went along. They knocked on his door at 3 o'clock in the morning. He did the unheard of thing to get out and recognize the state of Israel. While we were still debating the whole situation at the UN, he left our own representatives high and dry. Well, every president has been confronted with that. Eisenhower tried to be a little bit more even-handed. Nixon sent an envoy to the Middle East as soon as he took office. It was former Governor Bill Scranton, and he came back after a fact-finding trip for about 1 month. He told President Nixon we should be even-handed in the Middle East. The Zionists went out of their minds saying, what do you mean even-handed? It's like I'm telling you, why don't you try to be fair? That report has gathered that much dust on state, but never saw the real light of day. And every president has been confronted with this issue. And it is an issue. People have the right to defend their own country.
Now,
2,000 years.
Now, Jimmy Carter, in the last few years, has actually, he was, I guess, the first person to, at that level to actually acknowledge Israel has nuclear weapons. He visited Gaza, he's talked to Hamas, and he's been saying there should be negotiations.
Hamas won the election, but if you read the news stories, they will say, oh, the Hamas took over Gaza, without ever saying it won an election. And former President Bush said that we would observe democratic elections. As soon as the Hamas won in Gaza, they shut down all aid, closed the doors, and so forth.
But did Carter have any, in terms of his policy towards Israel and Palestine, was he any different than all the other American presidents when Carter was in power?
He got the first accord, in the Camp David Accords, and Begin promised him a lot of things, a letter that will acquiesce to concessions, never got the letter.
So President Obama comes to power with what seems like intent to do something different. What are the forces at play here? Because we're winding up as far as, I mean, you've said, and it seems rather obvious, it's the same policies we've always seen.
Right. I think American politics, pro-Israel, if you take a vote in Congress, maybe you might get 5 people vote against any further aid to Israel as it continues its occupation. But that's about it. They have vast power.
Who's they?
The Zionists.
Obama went to AIPAC, the main lobby organization of the kind of right wing of the pro-Israel lobby, when he was running for president, and he said to AIPAC more or less what they wanted to hear, with the exception maybe of the no expansion of settlements. So he's actually following through on what he campaigned on. He's never really suggested a different policy, has he?
No, not really. He's following through, that's true. I don't think he's ever made any real commitments to the Palestinians.
In terms of what you understand about the inner workings of the White House and how decisions are made, are there any forces behind the scenes at play here to try to put pressure on Israel to have a different kind of policy, or have they kind of given up on that?
I think President Obama gave up totally, early on. I don't think he even tried. He realized he's running up against a stone wall. Why take that on when he has so many other problems?
So do you think that's it for his administration in terms of new policy towards the Middle East?
I think he'd just as soon forget it if he could. But more and more, I think you can never escape the Middle East problem. As no modern president has been able to. At some point, it'll come back to him.
And at the next press conference with President Obama, assuming he calls on you, I don't know if he liked your first question very much.
I'm sure he didn't.
What do you want to ask him?
I want to ask him if he ever found out whether anyone in the Middle East has nuclear weapons.
Well, we'll see if you ever get a chance to ask that again.
I doubt it.
Thanks for joining us. And thank you for joining us on the Real News Network. This is the beginning of a series of interviews with Helen Thomas, but they'll be kind of interspersed, not one right after the other. We'll let you know when the next one is.